Greetings. Welcome to Conversation with Tony Mobley. On Conversation with Tony Mobley today, Mr. Chris Fenwick. Today is November 19th, 2025. This is episode 44 of Conversation with Tony Mobley. This conversation uses the TV broadcast software Mimo Live, and we also use Zoom. Conversation with Tony Mobley is produced by Clark Lopez Waterman, and our current team includes Laura Thompson, Zachary Sorensen, and Mickey McAture. Thank you, sir, and thank you, team. ConversationswithTonyMobley.com is our website. There you can see past conversations, and we encourage you to go back and look at those wonderful past conversations that we have. We also have a chat that's called Mukana, and it's courtesy of Alex Lindsay in 090. There you can ask your question, and your question can be voted up or down. That's right. But if you choose not to use Mukana, you are able to use the chat in YouTube. Ask your question there, and our team will pull your question and bring it in. But we want to tell you right now, this is a great opportunity to talk with Chris Fenwick. And the reason I say that is because this is, as he says, third rail light. So if you've seen our previous conversation in 2025, you will understand exactly what I'm talking about. But stay tuned, and please feel free to ask your questions of Mr. Chris Fenwick. And we want to thank Chris again for being here today. And Chris is a friend. And just to give everybody just a little bit of background, he is one of the people that is principally responsible for the existence of Conversation with Tony Mobley. We were working on another project together, and that project kind of fell apart. We were working with the individual, and they chose not to go forward with the project that we were all ready to jump on board with, and it was a major deal. And I had grabbed all these people to work on this project, and Chris, among others, said, hey, why don't you do it? And so that's how we got started. That's part of the reason that Conversation with Tony Mobley exists. And so we're going to get to the very first question. Who is Chris Fenwick? And that's for those of you who don't know who he is, or you have not seen our previous conversation. So who is Chris Fenwick?
Wow, that's kind of open-ended and weird, I'll be honest, Tony. I am I'm a video editor. That's what I do. I edit videos. I work in the corporate space. I chose that mainly because frankly the money's better. And that's pretty much all I do. I just turned 63 2 days ago, so I think
Happy
more.
belated birthday.
Thank you. I think more about the end of my career than anything else these days. And I'm also super excited. My wife and I's daughter is getting married in a couple of days. Actually, next Thursday on Thanksgiving Day. So we've been kind of updating, remodeling, and refurbishing things in our backyard because she's going to get married in our backyard on Thanksgiving Day with 60 people and a bunch of turkeys and hams. So the turkeys and hams are for dinner. They're not actually attending the wedding. But yeah, it's going to be fun.
Well, let's talk about your family. We've had a lot of different conversations, and you have shared a lot about your wife and your family and your dual home situation. And let's talk about the support that you've gotten over the years from your family in terms of the things that you're doing.
I'll tell you this. Before I met Trish, I had a couple of podcasts that I produced. One was all about Final Cut 10, and the other was about just kind of filmmaking in general. And I started doing those at a point in my life when uh, I had a lot of spare time on my hand. I'd been through a divorce. I I had changed my life to from doing a 90-minute commute to a 9-minute commute. And as it turns out, that extra 81 minutes you get back in a day is enough to produce a bad podcast. So um, I I was doing, at one point I was doing 3 different shows a week, and 2 about Final Cut and the other one. And and then I met Trish, and I got infinitely more happy, and I very organically stopped doing the podcast. And she always said, "I don't want to be responsible for you not doing the podcast." And I said, "No, that's totally fine. I'm that was a byproduct of being, having a whole bunch of spare time and being, sad and lonely. So no, I'd much rather be with you than do that." So, but in recent years, especially, the COVID thing, she's like infinitely supportive. And she's always says, "Whatever you need, whatever you got to do for work, that's I." And so that's a super blessing, that she really is like I would say infinitely supportive. And I apologize, she's coughing over there.
That's
We
okay. That's
we're
okay.
during the week we're in a very, very tiny studio apartment, so she's sitting about 10 feet away from me here.
Okay. So the next question is, please tell us about your view of Final Cut Pro in 2025.
This is kind of a, the classic dead horse thing. So Final Cut Pro is a video editing app. If you don't know, I would imagine much of your audience does. But there in the video space, when it comes to editorial, there's 3. I'll be generous and say 4 kind of main choices that you can have. In chronological order, they would be Avid. That's the one I'm being generous with because barely anybody uses Avid anymore. Then there was a thing called Adobe Premiere, and then Final Cut came out in 1999 and then was completely refurbished in 2011, and that's what we're currently using. And then the other one is the DaVinci Resolve. And there's other apps, of course. One of the ones that is the brunt of many a punchline is a thing called CapCut, which is a lot of the social media kids use on their phones. But I'm not including stuff like that. I'm just talking about, traditional desktop apps. I use Final Cut, and I am still convinced. I'll fight anybody. If you're trying to edit a video, you should be using Final Cut unless you enjoy arguing and yelling at your computer. And so
And I'm curious to why you would say that, because there are, and I know that you're a Final Cut Pro expert, but you, so and I don't use Adobe Premiere, but I understand that there's still a large following for Adobe Premiere.
oh yeah, millions of people use it. A lot of people use it. Yeah, I'm not saying people don't use it. I think the thing that's I almost said unique, but that's probably not a good word. The thing that's different about this guy is I don't have any objections to going out on a limb and being different. And
Okay.
in our industry, there is a lot of peer pressure to play with the cool kids and use what everybody else is using and do it a certain way because that's what everybody else does. There's an enormous amount of peer pressure. And if you don't think there is, you're probably lying to me and at least lying to yourself. There just is. And so people see their potential peers. And that's the crazy part, is sometimes people say like, well, I want to be like Casey Neistat, who by the way uses Final Cut. But I'm not, Casey Neistat is not my peer. I've never had a conversation with him. I've never met him. I think he'd be fun to hang out with. But I'm not going to cross paths with Casey. I don't eat dollar pizza in Lower Manhattan enough to cross paths with the guy. So, and if you're a Casey Neistat fan, you know exactly what I mean by that. So I don't mind being the odd man out. I don't care. I don't care if the majority of the corporate world, especially Bay Area based, they use Premiere. Everybody uses Premiere. Everybody uses Premiere. In the more social media, I'm an up and comer, they use Resolve. If they come from a more high end and they do a lot of color work, they use Resolve because reasons. Almost the only people that use Avid are like, you know, Hollywood and Hollywood
Movie
wannabes.
folk.
Yeah. I mean, and the bottom line is like, that industry is just totally dead. And anybody who like, oh, I want to do this, I mean, you're just wasting your time. It's dead. It's dying. They don't actually realize it yet. The people that are there, they're still holding on with a thread of hope that, you know, their way of life will continue, and it won't. It just won't. And I've been saying that for 10 years. I was hosting a Final Cut event, I don't know, maybe 8 years ago, 8 years ago at NAB. And we used to do a thing called, we called it the State of the NLE, NLE being nonlinear editor, the State of the NLE. And for a while there, and this was before Resolve as an editor was like worth talking about. So we'd have an Avid editor, a Final Cut editor, and a Premiere editor. Most people will tell you, it's not about the tool. Use the best tool for the job. You know, what does it mean to be a Final Cut editor? Shut up. You know exactly what I mean. Like, I get it. Like the elitist pricks will want to say like, you know, it's just use the right tool. No, there's definitely something that is a Premiere editor, because that person opens up Premiere by default and they do it every day and whatever. That guy's a Premiere editor. Yes, we both edit videos. I don't care. But they would have an Avid editor, Premiere editor, and a Final Cut editor. And today they'd throw in a Resolve editor. And I remember sitting there watching these guys like on the stage, like going through their Q&A. And I leaned over to a friend of mine and I said, it's like watching the last 3 dinosaurs fight over the last meal before the asteroid hit, you know? Like, it's just, they're like fighting over the last bone. It was just so dumb. It was so monumentally dumb, especially the Avid thing. And I remember getting in a heated discussion, I won't say a fight, but with a very well-known technical pundit in our space. And I said to him, I go, and he says, well, you know, I think it's cute you use Final Cut. It's not professional. I go, what does that mean? He goes, well, like Hollywood. I go, you think that matters? You really, honestly, you think that still matters? Like Hollywood matters? You don't know it yet, but it's dead. And it just keeps dying more and more and more, you know? So I use Final Cut because it's faster and it's super clever. And in 2011, when they released it, they literally threw everything out that they had built up for 12 years and said, what if? And I'll just flat out tell you, it's far superior. All the cool kids don't use it. And there are some things like color, and it's so funny. Alex Lindsay, he'll text message me sometimes like in the middle of the night, and he'll have some complaint about Final Cut. Like, one time it was so funny. He said, he texted me, "I'm sorry, Alex, I'm kind of throwing you under the bus here." He goes, "Final Cut is dead to me. They've ruined the user interface. I can't scroll left and right in the timeline now." I'm like, what are you talking about? And I responded back. I think I said, "What are you talking about?" And in the Mac OS, there was something that changed a few years ago where the default little scroll thing, what do they call? I don't know what they call that, where you scroll left and right. Well, no, not the timeline, but the user interface, the little bar at the bottom that you click on it and scroll back and forth. And he goes, "They took it away." I go, "It's there. You just have to hover your mouse over it." And first of all, and more importantly, you actually use that? I said to him, I go, "You actually why in the world would you use that?" Because I use the little scrolly wheel on my mouse and the shift key. So if you just scroll, it scrolls up and down. But if you shift and scroll, it scrolls left and right. And I was like, "Alex, I'm going to be honest with you. I've never touched that thing." Now, I have a lot of respect for Alex Lindsay. He's a really smart guy. He's a wicked smart guy. But he's out there crapping on Final Cut because he can't find the scroll thing. He'll have a good excuse, whatever. You know what I'm talking about, Alex. But I'm like, I got news for you, Alex. I've never even, I kind of didn't know it was there. Like, shift scroll is how you go left and right, and I've done it since day one. So, but I don't mind being different. But if you know somebody who wants to learn how to edit, Tony, feel free to just say, "Shut up, Fenwick. I don't want to talk about this anymore." But
I have a question related to that.
Okay, so let me finish one short thing. If you know somebody who wants to learn how to edit, I always say the important thing about learning how to edit is learning how to craft a story between like the wide shot, the medium, the close up, the tension of the ECU, the reversal, the B-roll, like those are things. And you can learn that in iMovie, and hell, you could probably learn it in CapCut. But so it really doesn't matter. But I wouldn't wish DaVinci Resolve on my worst enemy. Like I would not. Like if that's what you want to do, you're on your own, but you're going to have a lot of headaches. Final Cut's like way easier, way faster.
You're saying that because of the learning curve with DaVinci?
Yeah. Well, so there is a thing in editorial, Tony, it's called, the issue is called clip collision. Okay. So in clip collision, if I have, I'm going to use some of my playing cards here. Let me get a black card. Hold on. Because I got a red card, and there we go, black card. So if you have two clips like this, and I want to move this clip this direction, right? In a traditional editing system, there is a phenomenon that's called clip collision. So I pick this up and I move it, and it goes bonk, 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 bonk. And that's kind of a bummer. Final Cut says, and so what you have to do is you have to like change a bunch of modes. You have to change, it's like 4 extra clicks. Final Cut just says, "Oh, here, let me move that out of the way. And then I can move this like this." And it just does it for you. Now, the result may be the opposite of what you want. You may want this one on top of this one, but then you either pick it up and move it up there, or you hit, I don't know, it's like Option up arrow, and it just goes, "Oh, here, let me restack that." It's just so much better, so much faster. It's just,
okay. So
what's your follow-up question?
You brought up iMovie, and so For the house of worship that I work with, from time to time, I have to do a little bit of editing. I am not an editor. I am someone who every now and then tries to
Has to edit. Yeah.
try to edit. And so when I do that, most of the time that I am using iMovie. And
Yeah.
there is a part of me that is saying, you're wasting your time. Just go ahead and try to learn Final Cut.
Okay.
Do you think that that's valid, or it's okay to start with iMovie and then graduate?
Let me ask you a question. In the editing that you're doing, do you get to a point where you're pulling your hair out and you go, I can't do X. I can't put a picture on top, or I can't put music underneath, or I can't lift a section out. Do you get stumped? Like it
No,
can't do? Then
no.
you're fine.
iMovie does what I needed to do.
You're fine. You're an editor. You have a task, you pick a
No,
tool, you
I'm not going to claim that, Chris. I'm not going to
but
claim
but
that.
but you see what I'm saying? It's like you had a thing
Yeah.
you had to do, and you did the thing you had to do. You did editing things with an editing tool.
Yes.
So,
It got me through.
here's what happens in our industry. We guilt people into taking on a whole another level of like headache because iMovie isn't professional enough. And so you could very easily, Tony, if you actually listen to all the crap on social media, you'd say, well, if I want to be more professional, I should be spending, $65 a month for Adobe Premiere and the Creative Suite, or I'm going to go download a free copy of Resolve and then lose, a couple of months of my life to figure out how to not have all these, clip collisions, and that's just a waste of your time. You're getting your thing done. Now, if you get to a point where you're like, well, how come I can't do this? There may be a time. There's certainly things that Final Cut does that iMovie cannot. And I would
Mhm.
say, I'm just going to guess, I could be completely wrong about this, but like 50 to 70% of what you learn in iMovie is adaptively compatible. I'm coining a term. Adaptively compatible. It's close enough. When you do get to Final Cut, you'll go, oh yeah, that kind of reminds me of iMovie. Okay, I got it. It's not identical. It's not exactly the same, but it's like adaptively compatible. there's your episode title. Adaptively compatible.
Okay.
But like when you get to the point where you can't do something, one of two things is true. Number one, it may not do it. And number two, you may not know how to do it. But one of the things that I see happen in our industry all the time, and any one of your techs on the back end will tell you this, that you see all the time is like there's a lot of people that get to the point where you say, oh, this can't do it. And then it gives them like a justification to like run out and buy a new thing, and then they bring it back, and then they have to like struggle, and eventually they figure out how to do the thing they wanted to do. But if they weren't so proud and were just to reach out to somebody and go, hey, how do you do that thing? They made the software that you had may actually do what you want to do, but you just didn't know how to do it. And now you have two pieces of software, one that could have done what you wanted to do, and the other one that also does what you wanted it to do, but costs you extra money.
Mm.
What
Yeah.
what good is that? That's just silly, right? So anyway,
Absolutely. Yeah.
I just don't mind being the odd man out. I don't care. I don't care if people think I'm stupid. I know I'm stupid.
We're going to change gears. Well, we
Sure.
all know better than that. We're going to change gears. We're going to talk about. Please talk about your faith.
Uh, I grew up in a Christian home in the 60s and 70s. Always going to church. you know, it's just the thing you do. It's the Sunday morning thing. Friday and Saturday, your parents are fighting like cats and dogs, and Sunday, you put your Sunday best on, you get dressed, and you go to church. Um, and it was just a part of life that I never questioned. I don't think I made any decisions for myself, for my own self, until probably junior high. Not probably junior high. My mom used to force me to go to summer camp. It was a Christian summer camp, and for the most part, I didn't want to go. I didn't like all the touchy feely songs and sharing and opening up and blah blah blah. I don't want to do all that. But she would trick me, because when she'd pick me up at the end of the week of summer camp, she'd say, "So did you do some fun things?" And I said, "Well, yeah, Mom, I got to row the rowboats in the creek, and I got to do the archery and shoot things. And yeah, it was fun." And then next summer, when she'd go, "Hey, so, 2 weeks from now, you're going to camp." "I don't want to go," she'd say. "Yeah, but last summer when we picked you up, you said you had so much fun." And so she would use, archery and rowboats against me.
Oh
Uh,
boy.
but through Mount Hermon, which is where we would go to these camps, I met some really influential uh, men who shaped my future, because I saw the world that they had navigated, and I just kind of made the assumptions like, well, I should probably do that too. And there was a couple of people that I knew that went to Westmont College, which is in Southern California, and I just kind of assumed, well, I should probably go there, because these guys that I really respect went there. Um, Academically, it was a total mistake. I didn't need to go to a liberal arts college, um, and I spun my wheels for a long time, until I figured out that you could actually make a living doing this kind of stuff, which I thoroughly enjoyed. But while I was there at Westmont, I was a religious studies major for a while, and part of my wheel spinning time. But through that, it was interesting, because as a kid, you get told a bunch of Bible stories, and then as a young adult, if you're smart, eventually you're going to have some sort of more mature questions about these things that have been, very carefully programmed and rammed down your throat as a young kid. So religious studies at Westmont allowed me to apply some intelligence and some logic and some hardcore studying, to the point where uh, I realized that what I believed was worth believing. Right. So like I was able to put it on the fire and give it a test. And I'll tell you, I'll give you one example, and cut me off if you want. Um, when you talk with non-believers, they will say to you, "Oh, I can't believe that crap. It's been rewritten a million times. Who knows what the original writers ever wrote?"
I don't mean to interrupt you, but as you were saying that, I have kind of a similar experience from the
Yeah.
standpoint that um, I went to college as an older student.
Okay.
I started at 24. I had actually worked a while and done a lot of different things, but when I went to college with all of the things that you were taught in Sunday school, and all of that was in me. And when I had my first introduction to religion class, no, not introduction to religion. It was my first world religions class, and it it disrupted the way in which I thought about my faith in God, from the standpoint of understanding that what I had been taught was kind of to get me through to the point where I could recognize that when you are exercising faith as a verb, an action, that those things that you were sort of given as a foundation are not as important as you thought they were. In other words, what I'm saying is, I got to the point, like you said, that I understood that believing in God, trusting in God, was more than just the stories
Yeah.
that I had been told as a child.
Yeah.
And I think that revelation is important for people to experience, because if you don't get a chance to stretch your faith, then you in some ways become stagnant.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's
And
not only
you
stretch, it's also like, it's good to be challenged. It's good to be challenged. I mean, the Bible says, we should be ready to defend our faith, And so if you live in a world where nobody ever does that, where you've never been challenged, you might need to get out more,
Yeah, yeah. And in these times, it's really a serious issue from the standpoint of what we believe, particularly those that call ourselves Christians, in terms of these dynamics that exist in our world. And for a lot of us, it's difficult to say, well, I'm a Christian because I believe this, and you're not because you don't believe in this, as if
Yeah.
this particular thing is the only way in which I can be a Christian. And so,
Have you ever met anybody, Tony, who, and I don't know what you call these people. That sounds really bad when I say these people, but have you ever met somebody who has subscribed to the belief that if you read through all of Genesis and the book of Numbers and the rest, frankly, most of the rest of the Old Testament, and you do the math, especially in the book of Numbers, actually, I think Genesis 2, where it says, like, Methuselah lived X number of years, and when he was X number of years old, he begat this child, and that child lived this many years. And I remember in junior high, I did that math. Like, we could totally figure out how old the world is. All you got to do is do the math, right? And I did that. I literally sat there, with a pen and paper, and I flipped through, and I was like, okay, hold on. How old was he? Okay, so to subtract that. Okay, then this kid was this, so I've met people that do that math, and then they say, oh, so the world is 3,682 years old, or whatever the number is. I don't know what it is. It's not very old because, on the first day, God created the heavens and the earth, right? And I've met people that say, if you don't subscribe to that number that you can divine out of Genesis and Numbers by doing the math, then you can't be a believer. Because how are you possibly going to tell me that you don't believe that, but you believe the rest of it? And I was like, wow, somebody who really hurt you as a child, like that. I don't know how you get to that point. A good friend of mine is a pastor, and I may have told you this story once before, but he, Scott, likes to say this. He says, and the New Testament says that all Scripture is, inspired by God and suitable for teaching and blah blah blah. I am not a scholar, believe me. So Scott likes to say, he says, I believe that the Scriptures are inspired by God, and they are there for us to make our lives better and to teach. But I also believe that part of the Bible is historical, and part of it is allegorical. And we know that to be true because Jesus told parables. Parables are not historical events. They are stories that have a meaning. let me tell you this story about a woman looking for a coin that she lost. Did a woman really lose a coin? Probably not. It was a parable. So Scott says some of the Bible is historical and some of it is allegorical. And then he says the most important part. He says, and I'm not smart enough to tell you which is which. So to this guy that I met once who it was like trying to tell me I wasn't a real believer because I didn't believe in the math of Genesis and Numbers, I was like, I think some of that's allegorical. You know,
Well,
did God create the heavens and earth in 24 hours? Well, no, because when he started, he didn't even have a sun. So, you know, we didn't really know how long a day, I mean, I think there's allegory there, and I'm okay with it. And as I get older, I'm okay with that. And frankly, Tony, I will say this, you know, my mother passed away earlier this year, and my dad passed away several years ago, 18 years ago. And as my parents have left us, I'm more comfortable saying things that are possibly a bit more incendiary, you know, and like I'll give you a for instance. First of all, I tell people this all the time. I'm much more comfortable believing in God than the Big Bang Theory. It's much easier for me to believe that we live in a universe that was designed by an intelligent creator than there was just a big explosion and all this stuff happened. That just sounds ridiculous. Like, come on, really? But that being said, I'm not saying that there wasn't a giant cataclysmic explosion type event, but then how did that happen? And how did we get to here? So there still has to be a God in that equation, you know? I mean, like a true atheist who says, oh no, we just come from nothing. So there was nothing, and then a big explosion happened and all this created. Okay, so what happens when you die? Oh, well, you just go back to being nothing. So like there's a great comedian who does a whole routine on this. He says, so you return to your creator. It sounds like God to me. You know, so to me, it's just much easier. And even if the Judeo-Christian, you know, Christian God, Jesus with the long hair and the sandals, even if the God that I believe that you and I believe in is not the one and only absolute true, I think he is the true God, but I think that people around the world see our creator possibly through different eyes, and they describe him differently. And I'm okay with that. I'm kind of okay with that. That would be a huge argument with my mother, so I would have never said that, you know, 9 months ago when she was still with us. But I can say it now. It's like, you know, I'm okay with that. I also, and if you want to get super conspiracy theory, I'm fascinated, truly fascinated by the preponderance, big word, day of the week, word of the day calendar word there, preponderance of geological and archaeological sites around the globe that we can't explain. We can't explain, and the best example is the ruins of Machu Picchu in Peru. These stones, they know where they were harvested from, where they were quarried from. It was, you know, miles and miles away. I think 100 miles, 150 miles, something like that. I don't know, I could be totally wrong, but like a long ways away and way, way, way down the mountain, right? They were quarried from way down the mountain. And those stones are way up in the mountain now. And they've been there for like hundreds, if not thousands of years. And I got news for you, Tony. If you and I had all the money in the world and all the big yellow Caterpillar trucks and tractors and whatnot, I heard a great thing today. What's the difference between a bulldozer and an excavator. A bulldozer does pushy pushy, and a excavator does diggy diggy. But scoopy scoopy. So with all of the technology available to you and I today, I don't think we can move those stones.
I don't think so either.
And yet they're there. So did those construction sites happen in the timeline of the 66 books that we call the Bible? Or did they exist on this planet many, many, many thousands of years ago, that in a civilization that predates what you and I have been taught is the history of humanity? You know, the Egyptians like to say that, you know, they're like the cradle of humanity. Now, yes, there is the Tigris and Euphrates River in the Mesopotamian Valley, and that's commonly seen as like the birth of humans. Christians like to say that that's where the Garden of Eden probably was. But true civilization, where you can separate, where you can have one group of people that just work, and then you have farmers that can feed them, right? Like that's a big thing. Like, we're not hunter-gatherers where I was like, okay, Fenwick's hungry, I'm gonna go get some food, and then I'm gonna like build a hut. That's different than saying we're gonna build giant pyramids. But then we're
gonna move on, because I already know that we probably need to have a full-fledged
I could
conversation about
forever.
faith, because I right now I have so many things that I want to respond to you as far as this line, but we want to honor those who have asked questions. So we have a question from Claude Lopez Waterman. Do you get angry at people who don't agree with? That's the question. Don't agree with you?
With what?
Or
I have people that disagree with me all the time. It's part of life. That's when it gets fun. You know?
Yeah, our last conversation, we didn't agree.
Yeah, right. And yet we finished still friendly.
Yes.
Which means that you and I are much better than everybody else that you can find on mainstream television right now.
Okay, we have another question coming in from Springfield, Missouri. Before a discussion gets to policy, how do we get players on opposing views to just sit down for a civil conversation? Vic, I would say that's what we're trying to do here in this conversation. This is an intentional conversation that Chris and I are having, and we've had conversations in the past about that Chris calls the third rail, and he referred to this conversation that we're having tonight as third rail light. Part of the issues that seemed, in my opinion, that seem to be going on in the world right now is that there is no dialogue, regardless to what side of any particular issue that you are a part of. There is no dialogue. There is no conversation. And we as human beings have to make a shift if we really want to try to resolve some of the things. A lot of the things that are going on in the world, regardless to where you line up on, is that people don't talk to each other. It's okay not to agree with a person that has a different point of view than you have. Yeah. It's okay. And go ahead, Chris.
So, are you familiar with Robert's Rule of Order?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it is it was, I was just looking it up. It's written by a guy named Henry N. Robert. He was some sort of a U.S. military officer, but basically it was a pocket manual of how to get people in a room together and discuss things in a civil way. We are creatures that are we are mimes. We see things and we copy them, right? That's not a mime. We copy things. We get exposed to something, right? And then we do that thing. If you go turn on Fox News or CNN or MSNBC or whatever, I like to say MSLGBT, if you turn on the news, you're going to see people yelling and screaming at each other. And the understanding, whether it is prescribed or not, the understanding is if you get in front of a microphone, if you get in front of a camera, if you talk louder and faster than the other people in the room and get in the last word, then you win. You win the argument. Well, first of all, you're at a disadvantage if you're going to start off by saying it's an argument. It's not an argument. We're going to explore a topic, and we're going to do it in a civil manner, and we're going to use words properly. We're going to be logical. We're going to be intelligent about it. But just talking faster and louder doesn't make you right. It just makes you fast and loud, you know? And there's some really good examples of it. Do you know who Ben Shapiro is?
Yes.
Ben is a wicked smart guy. Talks faster than I think anybody I know. Really smart. He doesn't have to be loud because he's so fast. And most of the time when you're listening to him, you're like, I think I understand what you just said. But being fast and loud doesn't mean that you're right. And you have to be willing to listen to somebody else's opinion. What I find super annoying, and what I like about doing things on the web, like what we're doing, is when a conversation gets to a point where it gets awkward, more often than not, that people like have to go to a commercial break. Like, oh, well, we'll be back right after this soap ad or this, medicine ad. And people don't get to finish their ideas. Now, you don't want somebody filibustering and monopolizing the time. And I understand that I'm totally guilty of that, and I apologize. But I think a couple times already in this conversation I've said, cut me off when you're sick of me. But when you lose the ability to have a conversation with somebody and something is true and not challenge them, I think we don't teach people how to listen carefully. I find it so interesting. Even on office hours where we met, Tony, I find it really frustrating when somebody asks a question and then the panel starts going off on it. And I'm listening and I'm like, that's not what they asked. What are you talking about? And I know exactly what happens is that we all have, I like to think of information in my head as stuff on cue cards, right? If you ask me, about HDMI, I got like 3 or 4 different cue cards in my head that I could pull out and I can recite. They're called my HDMI cue cards, and I can pull those out and I can spew that stuff off. So what happens is somebody hears a question and they go, "Oh, I have some cue cards squirreled away in my head about either that topic, but all too often it's not that topic, it's an adjacent topic. And it might share one word, and then somebody pulls out a thing, and just because they want to hear themselves talk, they start rattling off their cue cards about the adjacent topic because it has 2 or 3 adjacent, overlapping words. And it's like,
Yeah.
let's go back. Can we? And you may have heard me do it. It's like, well, that's not what Peter actually said. Let's look at his question again. He says, I want the simplest way to do it. You just rattled off $6,000 worth of gear. That's not simple.
Yeah. Let's ask Victor if we have gone down the right path. So, Victor, if we have not gone down the right path, please ask your question again. And that goes for anybody else. If you have a questions that we've talked about, or you want to add a question, this is a great opportunity to have a conversation. That is Third Rail Light with Tony. Oh my goodness.
What's wrong?
We have run out of time.
What?
Let's ask this question. So please talk about your love for woodworking.
Okay, it's very simple. I'll make this quick. Before the show, you mentioned we were talking about hair loss. And you were telling me about your son. Do you have more children than just the one kid, the one son?
Yes.
Okay.
My other son, he's more like me in terms of the way the hair is going.
So I believe, Tony, that we are created by a God who was a creator. In 7 days, whether that's historical or allegorical, he created the heavens and the earth and all the creepy crawlies and all of man and Adam and Eve and the whole thing. He also said he created us in his image.
Mm.
And if God is a creator and he created me in his image, he wants me to create. Most of us on this big blue dot, this little blue dot in space, as Carl Sagan called it, most of us have the opportunity to create by having children. You are a creator because you have children. I don't have any children of my own. There are no little Chris Fenwicks or little Christine Fenwicks walking on this planet that share my DNA. I don't have my own children. I never got to create children. And throughout history, man has created by having children. Man has created by creating businesses. Man has created by creating empires and sometimes having wars all over the planet in doing so. To me, there is something very spiritual about taking a stack of wood and then fashioning it into a thing and creating. It's immensely satisfying to walk up to a chest of drawers that I've built and pull the drawer out and say, oh, I made that. So that's why I like woodworking.
Fantastic. What's next for Chris Fenwick?
The next thing I'm doing, besides the wedding, Tracy's getting married next Thursday on Thanksgiving. And then after that, I'm hopping in the truck with a bunch of tools and I'm driving to southern Utah, and we are going to take sort of a utilitarian storage shed, Keenan and I, and my friend Bob, and we are going to turn it into the ultimate outdoor backyard office space for Keenan and Jen in southern Utah. So we're going to be there for a week or two or something like that, and we're gonna make our own shiplap, and then we're gonna we're gonna insulate it and AC. We'll put a mini split in it, some shiplap and floors and ceilings, and gonna make a nice little office space for them.
Any chance you might shoot some video our way in terms of seeing how this is going to be done?
There might be some stuff on Instagram. I got to tell you, when I do the woodworking, I have so much respect for like woodworking channels and people that, put stuff on YouTube and they chronicle like every cut and every measurement. And like, my mind is not thinking like that when I'm building. Like I'm on the ragged edge of like, making it work. So I'm not thinking about the video stuff too. I get plenty of that in my 9-to-5 job. I don't need to do that on my weekend, when I'm having
Gotcha.
fun. But
Okay.
yeah, we'll take some pictures.
Okay. We're down to our very last question, and that is you're speaking to the world. What do you want the world to know?
Be nicer. Just be nicer. I think we could all be a little nicer, myself included. That's my message to the world.
All right, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate you sharing Third Rail Light with me today. And we want to thank everyone for watching on YouTube and also on our website, conversationwithTonyMobley.com. Conversation with Tony Mobley, again, is produced by Clark Lopez Waterman. Our current team is Laura Thompson, Zachary Sorensen, and Vicky McAture. Thank you, sir. Thank you, team. Thank you, Mimo Live. Thank you, Zoom, for making this broadcast possible. We have conversations with real people. Stay tuned for new episodes and great conversations with Tony Mobley. We want to thank everyone for the nearly 200 plus conversations, episodes on Conversation with Tony Mobley. When you have time, we ask that you go back, look at some of those conversations. There are some amazing conversations, and some of them are very relatable to some of the things that are going on in the world. We want to thank Chris Fenwick for being a part of our conversation today, for doing the work you do, and for being the person who you are. We're going to say for next week, happy Thanksgiving. We'll see you on a new Conversations with Tony Mobley on December 3rd. And please feel free to support Conversation with Tony Mobley by volunteering or donating. This is an in-house operation, and I need your donations to keep us running. Please like and subscribe on YouTube. More interesting people. Thank you so much for being here today, everyone. Take care. God bless you. Thanks again, Chris Fenwick. Take care, everybody. See you soon. Bye-bye.